If you are new to dirt bikes, motorcycles, or like me, from time to time you buy a used bike, this video is for you. There are a few things that you should look for to make sure that you don't get taken for a ride.
Now it just so happens I picked up a bike not that long ago that probably has all of the issues that I'm about to tell you guys to look out for, and probably a whole lot more. Nearly everything on this bike needs to be replaced, and the engine doesn't even sound that good. The difference is I knew that full well going in because this bike is part of a restoration project. Now importantly, I haven't touched this thing since I brought it home. How you see it in the video is going to be exactly how I saw it when I picked it up. It's dirty, there's a bunch of things wrong with it, so it should give you guys a pretty good idea of what to look for if you're looking at buying a used bike and you don't want to do a bunch of work to it. So with all that said, let's dig into this.
Kicking things off, we will look at the very first thing you see, the overall appearance. Now, if you're dealing with someone that has any sort of experience selling motorcycles, they'll understand how easy it is to polish a turd. You can get various sprays and polishes to make any bike look miles better than it actually is. So make sure you look past the shiny coat of polish and dig into the true state of the bike. If the seller can't be bothered to even wash the bike, it truly speaks to their commitment to any sort of maintenance schedule. If the bike isn't even cleaned, I wouldn't even bother. Now, for simplicity's sake, we'll start at the front of the bike and work our way back, looking at things methodically as we go. First thing, check the front tire along with the wheel bearings. Does the front tire look new? Is it weathered and worn? When you spin it, does it spin straight or does it have a huge kink in it because the rim is bent? Give it a shake side to side to see if the bearings are still in decent shape and how easily the tire actually moves. New bearings are not a big deal and I do have videos on them, but picking up little things can take money off the top of the price that you have to pay. Additionally, make sure that the front tire and the front fender look like there's some alignment. If they are off, that could mean the forks are twisted, which could indicate a larger suspension issue, a bent axle, or some other problem. Have a look at the suspension. Are the fork seals leaking? Is there a bunch of fork oil on the front wheel hub and the brake disc? If so, that's an indication that at the minimum the fork seals will need to be replaced, which means he hasn't taken care of his suspension. Next up, we can check the steering stem bearings, and there's a really easy test to do that. Grab the front brake, and with any good forward thrust, push down on the front suspension while locking the front tire. If you feel any movement in the steering stem, that means those front bearings are shot as well. No movement is a good sign, and these bearings are often neglected. Staying near the steering stem, have a look at the levers and the condition of the handlebars and grips. Make sure that the handlebars are straight and that the levers aren't all bent up. Although these parts can be replaced, it's also a good sign that the bike has had a couple hard crashes. Moving on to the engine area, there are a few things that you can look at to give you an idea of what the internals of the engine actually look like. If you have a compression tester and the seller is willing to let you, a compression test is an easy way to check the condition of the top end. Short of that, if the bike has a Kickstarter, slowly try to turn the engine over by hand and you should feel a good amount of compression behind the Kickstarter. Now, a 2-stroke should be easier to kick over than a 4-stroke, but it still shouldn't roll over completely easy. You should feel some resistance as you try to turn it over by hand. If you have a tool with you, and again the seller will let you, check the condition of the spark plug. If the spark plug is too dark, the bike is running too rich. And if it's too white, the bike is running too lean. That'll also give you an indication of the type of hours the engine has on it. Although too rich isn't a massive problem, too lean can be. That can mean that the top end is ready to go at any moment. Find the oil filter plug on the bike and dip your pinky finger in it, getting some oil on it. If the oil smells like it's really burnt, that's not a good sign and shouldn't have a burnt smell to it whatsoever. If it does, that's a sign of a bigger issue or a lack of maintenance. Moving along, have a look at the air filter. This is like washing the bike. If the seller is willing to leave his air filter dirty and won't even take the time to clean it when you come to look at the bike, then surely his maintenance is not taken very seriously. A dirty air filter means likely a lazy maintenance schedule. If the bike does start, how easy does it start? One thing some sellers will try to do is warm up the engine before you get there, knowing that the bike will start easier. So before you start the engine, put your hand on the side of the case to see if it feels warm to the touch. If so, that's an indication that he pre-warmed the engine, knowing it might have an issue starting. Once running, will the bike idle on its own? Or do you have to consistently twist the throttle slightly to keep it running? If the engine is in good shape, it should start easy and it should have no problem idling without being touched. Both while the engine is on an idle and while you have it revved up a little bit, have a listen to the bottom end of the engine. If you hear a slight knocking sound, that's a deal breaker. These are a good indication that your bottom end bearings are shot, which would likely require pulling the engine, tearing apart the case, and completely rebuilding it. That's a lot of money and a big job. If you hear a knock coming from the bottom end of the bike, find another bike. If you have no experience with the next one, it can be tricky to decide if it's good or not. But the condition of the clutch can play an important role in the overall condition of the engine. A quick check of this is to pull the clutch in and put the bike in gear without touching the throttle. If the bike stalls, that means the clutch needs some work. If the bike stays running, then at least the clutch is disengaging enough to allow the gears to mesh without stalling the bike. Once you've had a good look at the engine, if you haven't come across any deal breakers, move back towards the suspension linkage area. A quick check on this, you can simply lift the rear end of the bike up via the seat or fender area, take the weight off the suspension, and if there's an issue with the bearings, you'll feel a small clinking in the linkage. That's an indication that the bearings are shot and will need to be replaced. Depending on the year of the bike, this can be a pretty common issue as they're often neglected. Have a look at the sprockets and chain. Make sure that the teeth on the sprockets are not all bent over or broken off altogether. Check the condition of the chain to see if it's rusted out, moves freely, or has an absurd amount of slack in it. Although an easy fix, if you see any one of these things, that's more money to be spent before you can ride it. Just like you would with the front wheel, check the rear wheel to see that it spins somewhat normal, rotates easily, and doesn't move side to side so much that the wheel bearings are shot. Often, you'll find the rear tire to have flat knobbies on it. That can be an indication that the bike has been ridden on pavement, which probably means it's been strung out for long periods, wearing out the engine. Putting on a new tire is not a big deal, but it gives you an indication of what the life of the bike has been. Additionally, check the condition of the brakes. Ensure the pads have at least some life left in them and they're not been dragging metal on metal. Look at the rotors, see if they're rusted out. These can easily be replaced, but again, it gives you an idea of the life of the bike.
And that's it. Those are some quick ways to see what you're getting yourself into when you're buying a used bike. Now, I do have some videos on things like wheel bearings and some maintenance on the bike. Should you find some stuff that you have to be replaced, because any part can be replaced, it's not that big of a deal, but it'll give you an idea of what you're getting yourself into. So I hope you liked the video, hope it helped you in some way. If so, smash that subscribe button for me below. Ride safe, stay safe. We'll see you guys in the next video. I'm gonna try and get this thing to start. It's almost there. It's almost there.